I welcome viewers, guest faculty from Richmond, Virginia, USA, Doc- Dr. Ashok Manga from my colleague from Gwalior in Dr. Tuteja Talk Show, Dr. Aradhana Bela Sood, who is a chair, child psychiatric and training director, today with us in Dr. Tuteja Talk Show. She will update us on mental health issues. Very rightly said by her that there is no health without mental health. But I would like to add on it. Dental hygiene is a mental hygiene, and that leads to the physical hygiene, is equivalent to it. Aradhana Bela Sood, she is MD, MSHA. A conversation with us, with me and Dr. Bangaji. Her home is Richmond, Virginia. Left India in 1980, residency and fellowship in USA. Attending at VCU since 1988, chair of the Division Awards for Distinguishing Services, Advocacy, Prevention and Public Health. Additional degree and leadership position for Syrian women in medicine in MSHA. Held leadership position at the state and national level. Her academic career. She is from our own state and city, Gwalior, from GRMC, Gwalior, India. Strong clinical identity, education of trainees and training director in USA is a big for country and for India also. Administrative work division chair, numerous special project with a system of focus and access program. Chair of Child Secretary and Training Director, Senior Professor of Child Mental Health Policy, Agnes Purcell McGravin Award for Prevention by the APA, Distinguished Service Award VCU, AACAP Counselor at Large and Secretary, appointed by 4 governors of Virginia to statewide agencies. Voted Best Physician, Child Secretary by peers from 1966 to 2025. Numerous publications on psychopharmacology, public health issues, gun control, ADHD, preparation, infant psychiatry. Clinical review article on prevention of mental health disorder, principle and implication. Our aim, why we are here. Our aim of life is update society, is the aim of Dr. Tuteja Talk Show. If you like, subscribe channel. Your suggestion, comments are always welcome. We welcome Dr. Belaji and Dr. Ashok Banga on this talk show. I hope the session will be very useful to pediatricians of Indian Academy of Pediatrics and at large in India among the pediatrician and the public, parents, teenagers and children. The show will be showing the mental health issues which are prevalent among Indian population also and which are ignored. I hand over the platform to Dr. Ashok Bangaji to continue the session. Thank you so much to both of you.
नमस्कार दर्शकों, नमस्कार हमारे गेस्ट डॉक्टर बेला जी और नमस्कार डॉक्टर टुटेजा। आप देख रहे हैं डॉक्टर टुटेजा टॉक शो और मैं हूं डॉक्टर अशोक बांगा। आज हमारी मेहमान हैं वर्जीनिया यूनिवर्सिटी की चाइल्ड सेक्रेटरी की प्रोफेसर, जो अमेरिका के एक जानी मानी चाइल्ड सेक्रेटरिस्ट हैं। यहाँ के मीडिया में उनका बहुत नाम है, बहुत अच्छी राइटर, बहुत अच्छी ओरेटर। जिन्होंने बहुत सारे सोशल रिफॉर्म्स किए हैं इस फील्ड में, और उसके लिए उन्हें बहुत बहुत सारे अवार्ड्स मिले हैं, जो आपने ऊपर देखा। जैसा आपने सुना कि वो ग्वालियर की स्टूडेंट हैं, 74 बैच के। और हमारे ग्वालियर के मेडिको फ्रेंड्स सारे इनको आराधना अवस्थी के नाम से जानते हैं। आइए शुरुआत करें बेला जी, आपके ही शब्दों में आपकी जीवन यात्रा और थोड़ा सा आपकी फैमिली के बारे में।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, and it is really an honor and a pleasure for me to be here on this. Dr. Banga was my senior, a very revered, we always looked up to him, and then he got married to my classmate, Usha, who is a very close friend. So, when Ashok ji approached me and Usha did, ki, why don't you appear on the show? It is really my honor because working with children is something which is very near and dear to my heart. So, particularly for India, जहाँ से मैं grow up हुई ग्वालियर में, went to medical school there, went to Scindia school before that, and I come from an army background. So आजकल इतनी सारी movies आई हैं उसके बारे में, तो my father was a colonel and he died in the Indo-China war when I was 5. So of course, he was a big inspiration for me, but more than that, it was my mother. Because she raised both of us, two daughters, single handedly, and really taught me that if you desire to do something, you can always achieve it, and particularly for women and girls, because in 1962, women really did not have a place, and the way she raised us has really, मैं बोलती हूँ कि मैं जिस मुकाम पे पहुंची हूँ वो मेरी माँ की वजह से है. So I want to acknowledge that definitely. And of course, GRMC, from where I come, it taught me a lot. And my inspiration was also my Mamaji, my mother's brother, who was the superintendent of the Agra Mental Hospital. I lived with him for 2 years, and while there, I remember sitting with the patients there who used to be involved in occupational therapy, and I used to have conversations with them when I was age 8. And that is what I really wanted to do. But I went into OBGYN, began my MS in OB, GYN in India, and as luck would have it, I got married. And within a year of that, I left and went to England. And जब मैं इंग्लैंड और इसलिए मुझे साइकाइट्री नहीं ज्वाइन की इंडिया में because it was very primitive. There was really nothing in it. There was nothing scientific about it. हर चीज का answer was ECT and hypnotics and sedatives. And I said, this is not right. This can't be medicine, right? And that is, I think, what exists in India at this point in time. But जब मैं इंग्लैंड गई और मैंने देखा कि the field is so wide open, and the biological and scientific discoveries that were going on in the field just hooked me. So when I came to America, within 2 years of landing in England, I ended up doing a residency in psychiatry and into child psychiatry because I love pediatrics. And in 1988, I joined VCU. And यहाँ पे आके, I finished my board certification within a year of both my child and adult boards. And then I became an attending here. And slowly, I kind of got into what really interested me. And I think I did not know that, is that when I look at a problem, I always think, yeah, we have made it, right? Humankind has made it, and there has to be a solution. And so I always would think that nothing is an obstacle unless you make it. And so mental health in Virginia was really in its infancy when I came here in 1988. It was the red-haired stepchild of medicine, right? कि कोई सोचता ही नहीं था कि psychiatry is sort of important. But then serendipity and a lot of work by people like me, I won't say myself, but a lot of people in the field in Virginia, we began to really push on the idea that at least like 1 in 5 kids end up having mental health issues, but there's no mechanism of really serving them. And this is because people who are funders, who set up systems, just do not see the importance of it. So it's really been a journey of about 38 years where now I feel mental health is right center stage of medicine here in Virginia. And I'm so happy that as I'm kind of getting into the twilight of my career and retiring perhaps, that things are in a good place. And we will talk about that as we go along. But it has been a journey. And that is why I think that speaking about it for professionals in India, for the public in India, is really a starting point. And I do know that the PGI in Chandigarh, as well as the NIMHANS in Bangalore, these are really sort of your main sort of places, even AIMS. I know Dr. Khandelwal, who's the chair of psychiatry or was at AIMS, and we have conversations about it. So I do know that there are people who really have that knowledge and have the ability to make changes, but India is very large. And I think you have to start somewhere. So I'm so happy to be having this conversation about kiddie mental health.
Dr. Bela, you have already answered a part of my question. But still, I'll think that how common are mental health issues among children? People used to think that mental health problems happen only among adults.
Yeah. So that is sort of the paradox, right? Because all the statistics, which comes from the National Institutes of Health, WHO, all basically emphasize that 1 in 5 people are going to have some sort of an emotional or mental health diagnosis for which they need professional intervention. So this is not ki stress hua and you're feeling down, but these are actual diagnoses which people end up having. And the paradox is that 50% of whatever you're going to have in adulthood, such as schizophrenia, depression, result of trauma, etc., appear by the age of 14. And by the time you turn 25, 75% of adult related mental health diagnoses present and are there. So why it's so important to kind of focus on young children and youth and adolescents is that the potential for prevention is huge because if you catch the problem early on, you're going to be preventing the morbidity, meaning कि जो आपकी problem है, and if you keep waiting for long, उसके जो complications होते हैं बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाते हैं, including suicide. So you can prevent that. If you catch the depression early on, you're going to be able to do something. And it doesn't have to get so bad. Just like any physical illness, right? आपको diabetes है और आपने उसकी ध्यान नहीं दिया, तो you end up having retinopathy, you can have neuropathies, you can have major complications. But if you keep the thing at bay, you're going to have a much healthy body.
Yeah. Problem in India is that we still consider mental health issues as stigma. We keep hiding it until the things reach to a particular level.
Right.
Is it the same thinking in the US?
Oh, as I said, my journey has been where, the Cartesian duality कि body अलग है, दिमाग अलग है, and those things never meet has been a very commonly understood thing, even the US. And that's what kind of leads to the stigma associated with mental health, that it does not have a place in real medicine, right? But now it has become center stage, as I said, of medicine because the complications which have arisen by ignoring it, both the physical health as well as emotional health, has become a very well recognized phenomena. So every country kind of has, of course, we are much more further down the road, but stigma, I'm sure in India is rampant, right? And there are various reasons why, particularly in India, and I think here too, there are so many things that kind of go hand in hand that why is mental illness not considered part of medicine? And the unfortunate problem with stigma is that if we stigmatize something, we are not aware of it. And if we're not aware of it, it just pushes the ball down the path and there's no intervention. So people seek help later on in the process of the illness. So if you think of it in terms of society, the social and cultural stigma which occurs with mental health is that people see it as a personal weakness. No one wants to acknowledge that I'm weak, right? So you don't want to, you ignore it very much. In India, particularly, it may be seen as a spiritual or moral failure. And sometimes people will go to faith healers and people who are non-professionals for seeking help. I remember when I was young, I was in India and people had epilepsy, तो लोग बोलते थे देवी चढ़ गई है. right? And it kind of really stopped people from getting neurological intervention for something which was clearly epilepsy as I look back. But उस time हम भी सोचते थे कि oh देवी चढ़ गई, so you kind of go along with some of those things. Same thing exists with psychiatry. That often people say ये तो ये हो रहा है. Familial issues like family feels like this is a direct assault on our sense of who we are. And people think, hey, I'm going to get this reputation, how my children are going to get married, will it affect employment? And in fact, in the US, this was a big problem because you had to put down in your application, do you have a history of mental health problems? Fortunate, and people didn't put it down, or they would put it down and they would not get the job. Now there are rules, there are federal laws that this cannot be asked. So it really gives people the open door to kind of seek help if they desire. We have also come up with programs which is called Safe Haven, where even doctors, professionals, when they have emotional problems, they can seek counseling, they can seek psychiatric help without ever being revealed to anyone. So that becomes really an important thing. Although I feel people should be open. If you have depression, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like having a chronic illness and you have to manage it. So ये होता है, and people are told, अरे ठीक हो जाएगा, या लोग क्या कहेंगे? We are very, very kind of concerned about that social stigma which occurs on a familial as well as a social and cultural level. Then there's a self stigma, like what's wrong with me? People, we do not want to acknowledge when we have a perceived weakness. But seeking professional help is really necessary for picking that up. So there are so many different levels. And I think a very important one is the lack of education, right? If we're not taught that in medical school, or we're not taught that in psychology school of how to engage people in that process, people are not going to be open to that. So education is a big, huge thing that it should become the language of how we converse in society. And when we begin to have that normal conversation of saying that mental health and how do you keep yourself well? And if you're not well, what kind of assistance do you seek at what level? And if you're in a crisis, this is how you need to seek help. So we need to normalize that conversation, because if we do that, then people will say, "Arey, I'm not the only one," because people have the sense that मेरे कोई ही problem है and I need to figure this out, and I need to be strong, and we can't do that to ourselves, society.
प्रॉब्लम इज हमारे यहाँ उस चीज को दूसरी तरह से लिया गया शुरू से. किसी को भी मेंटल हेल्थ इशू की बात होती है तो वो बोलते हैं क्या हमारा बच्चा पागल है.
Well, I was going to also say that
जो साइकेट्रिस्ट को दिखाना, साइकेट्रिस्ट मतलब पागलों का डॉक्टर.
बिल्कुल,
मेंटल
my mama
हॉस्पिटल,
used to be called पागलों का डॉक्टर.
मेंटल हॉस्पिटल को पागल खाना बोलते थे. यानी हमारी गलती वहीं से है कि हमने मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज को पागलपन बोल दिया. पागलों का डॉक्टर, पागल खाना, सारी बात हमारी उसी डायरेक्शन में होती थी कि वो स्टिग्मा बना दिया गया लोगों के मन में. लोग
बिल्कुल.
बताने में ये शर्म नहीं करते कि मुझे डायबिटीज है, पर उन्हें बताने में शर्म आती है कि मुझे डिप्रेशन है.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. And ये मेरे मामा जी used to go and give talks in Geneva. He was the principal investigator for schizophrenia, which is what fascinated me about the whole thing. And I mean, I have faced that. I used to go out socially and people would say, "What do you do for a living?" And I'd say, "I'm a child psychiatrist," and say, "Why would kids have any emotional problems? This is here." And I had to explain it, and I realized that it is the language which we give and the pejorative words we use, जैसे कि पागल है और ये तो weak है या उस तरीके की चीजें. So we have to convert mental well-being and mental health into compassionate language, which is if you have to paraphrase it rather than use these symbolic words which are very negative, and so it has to be a major reversal of the way we use language to describe these things.
Bela ji, these days many of the problems among children have a mental health component. Now we also understand this thing. But do you think that not enough pediatricians think of this when they are dealing with the physical problems? Are we
Oh,
missing the real etiology in many cases?
Oh, absolutely. And that fusion of how mental health issues can worsen the outcome of physical illness is a very well understood phenomena. And I think that in India, I remember when I did my pediatrics internship or whatever, we were so overwhelmed with the dehydration and the gastroenteritis and all of those very critically ill physical portion of it, that it never even dawned on us that there could be a psychological component to what is going on. So I do agree that when you are dealing with crisis upon crisis, you're not thinking of these other things which are contributing to it. But they exist, right? Asthma can become worse if you are really in a household where people are smoking, you know, and how do you kind of deal with that? How do you deal with the emotional component of depression as making a physical illness worse? So I think that pediatricians in India are overwhelmed by the crisis of the moment. And I think that the same is true here. So I always get this. So I wanted to say that for the past 8 years, my world has become pediatrics because I'm primarily working with pediatricians in the state of Virginia. I oversee all the mental health components of how we interact with pediatricians. And this is a very successful program because pediatricians would say, I just have 15 minutes. Why are you asking me to do this really heavy work? And I don't know anything about it. So we began to work with pediatricians of how to use screeners. So how do you screen for depression? And it's a thing which parents fill out. So if there are red flags which come up, the pediatrician becomes aware that there's a problem here. These are instruments like the PHQ or the PSC 17, and those screeners have become very helpful in keeping the busy pediatrician pick up stuff with the children. Some pediatricians have moved into the arena of mental health where they develop clinics. Like, for example, you're seeing kids, you're seeing, आपने जैसे बताया, 100 patients तो नहीं देखते यहाँ पे, लेकिन हाँ, I mean, I can tell you as a psychiatrist, I've sometimes seen 26 patients in a day. So pediatricians are very busy people. So we have to create methods wherein with screeners, etc., they kind of track these kids. And once they track the kids, they can open a separate OPD within which they just deal with the ones that they have screened in as having a possible problem. And then they have the education, which we do with a 3-day fellowship in child psychiatry. So these pediatricians are learning and then they're applying it to their population. So what that does is, because हमारे जैसे लोग child psychiatrists, so I'm just giving an idea of the problem here, we are just about 8,000 in the entire United States. Entire United States में about 8 to 9,000 child psychiatrists हैं. Pediatricians are about 50,000. So this model in which you amplify the knowledge I have in my head through a pediatrician can go 50-fold. So if we teach these individuals who are seeing a whole number of kids by giving them tools to really identify very quickly and then have a method whereby they see these kids and don't need a person like me where I have a 6-month to 8-month waiting list to see a child, is really a beautiful model because pediatricians can really amplify this knowledge by systematically coming up with a model which works. And I don't know what will work in India, but this could be a way that a segment of pediatricians who are interested in this can develop their skills. And I do think that it would have to come from a government sort of thing because उसमें ये होगा कि mandated आपका structure है और उसके अंदर आप ही कर लो. So this could be an example or a model where your local community, I don't know what the structure in India is. आपने बताया मेरे को तो I was kind of मैं चौंक गई कि वही बच्चा किसी different doctors के पास जाता है. To me, that's a fundamental problem in healthcare delivery because I feel continuity of care is something we need to emphasize. That a family must become familiar with one pediatrician who knows them in and out. Then they pick these things up too. So if that is not there, that is the first thing that needs to be, I feel, addressed because every person deserves that continuity. Like if I'm seeing a primary care physician here for my own health, अगर दूसरे के पास जा रही हूँ उसको फिर शुरू हो जाओ इक्के से, कि आप बता रहे हो कि क्या हो रहा है. So that is the first thing. And then
Yeah.
it is educating our professionals as part of the residency that this is an important thing. So the melding of pediatrics with kiddie mental health is a very important part which people here are now understanding. So now
Yeah.
it has become there's a entity which is called the ACGME, which is the Accreditation Committee for Graduate Medical Education. They have mandated it now that pediatric residencies must incorporate a huge amount of mental health in them. And people
Yes.
who are graduating must learn about this. Because right now we are training people who are 15 years out of residency, 20 years out of residency, and even younger ones. But education is very important so that people can identify, intervene, or agar
Yes.
problem hai, they can. So our model, so like today is my BMAP day, and actually a pediatrician who's seeing a child in their clinic, if they run into a problem with mental health issues, they can pick up the phone, call this line, and they'll get a person like me in 5 minutes. So I give them in time advice कि ये आप
Yeah.
करो, इस तरीके से आप उसको evaluate करो, इस तरीके से these are the labs you need, these are the things you need to do, this is the kind of therapy that is required because not all therapy is the same. So I'm able to give them my expert advice, and the child does not have to wait for 6 months to see someone like me. So this is a model that I have,
Yeah.
I'm part of, and I think it's a great access model.
Yeah.
Um,
So आपने इतने सालों में एक मॉडल इवॉल्व किया एंड मीन्स इट हैज बिकम अ सक्सेस.
mhm,
इंडिया में हमारी हमारी कंडीशंस दूसरी हैं. हमारे पास
mhm,
साइकियाट्रिस्ट बहुत कम हैं, और जो
बिल्कुल.
हैं वो भी मोस्टली एडल्ट्स के लिए ट्रेंड हैं. हमारे पास
Mhm,
काउंसलर बहुत कम हैं. हमारी
mhm,
हमारी एमबीबीएस या इवन एमडी पीडियाट्रिक्स के करिकुलम में मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा ध्यान अभी तक नहीं दिया जाता था.
mhm,
फिर रेफरल का सिस्टम नहीं है, रेफर किसको करें वो पॉसिबल नहीं है. पेशेंट
बिल्कुल.
10 जगह जाता है अलग अलग, तो वो कंटिन्यूटी ऑफ केयर नहीं है. बहुत बहुत सारे डिफरेंसेस हैं. और मुझे लगता है
Mhm.
जब आप यहाँ आई थी तो यहाँ भी काफ़ी कुछ इसी तरह से रहा होगा, जिसको आपने स्ट्रीमलाइन करके एक मॉडल इवॉल्व किया.
Yeah, and I don't want to take, I mean, I'm one of the small gears in the larger cog of everything. So I certainly don't want to give the impression that but I'm very interested in systems. So you have
Yeah.
to find people who find this interesting and really kind of push it, because it doesn't need a person like, you're trained in this, but someone who really believes in it and then garners all the help they can get and really start in creating the interest in the next generation who is studying medicine to say,
Yes.
there is a future here. This is something that you could possibly do. Because problem ये होती
Yes.
है कि जब आपके पास किसी को रेफर करने की क्षमता नहीं है, क्योंकि है ही नहीं कोई, तो फिर आप डायग्नोज नहीं करोगे. Because you'll say, if I diagnose, then what do I do with this? Right? So it's a
Yes.
circle.
Yes.
It's like a looping circle which goes on.
Yeah.
And so we have
Yes.
to figure out that in this loop, kahan par we can have the best impact as a starting point. So this
Yes.
conversation is really like, people can say, oh, this doesn't apply to me. It applies to all of us. It's simply we do not have the strength and the power to push it. I have always felt that when I look at a problem, I say, this is unsurmountable. And then I say, no, it is surmountable. These are man made problems. We have the courage to move
Yeah.
it. So I've
Yeah.
always, as I said in my introduction, that I've had a very strong clinical identity, meaning I've always had a very busy workload of the kids I see. But I'm also interested outside my periphery of what can I do extra to
Yes.
make this more amplified. So this is what I will tell clinicians who are watching this, is that अगर आपके पास अच्छा idea है, and आप gap देखते हो, and you have the will and the strength, because not everyone, and I don't expect that of everyone, because I know of lots of very good child psychiatrists who wouldn't touch this with a barge pole. They just tell me, are you crazy? Like, we have so much of work. Why are you getting into this? And I said, if we don't, then the children suffer. Kids suffer. And that is what we took the Hippocratic Oath on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do no harm and help. And so that's what
Yeah.
always drives me. But I'm sure कि 10 people who are practicing उनमें एक तो होगा जिसको ये लगेगा कि मुझे करना है कुछ इसके बारे में.
हिंदुस्तान में अ, मुझे लगता है कि या तो हमारे प्रयास पूरे नहीं थे, या
हम्म.
तरीका गलत था, या दोनों ही बातें थी। और फिर ये भी लगता है कि it's not just the lack of time, but the lack of knowledge is the real problem. Lack of knowledge among healthcare workers who are responsible for providing all this care. तो मुझे लगता है कि उस फ्रंट पे जैसे आपने काम किया उस तरीके से, वो आपने या आपकी टीम ने और आपके साथियों ने काम किया उस तरीके से करें तो शायद हम भी बहुत कुछ अचीव कर सकते हैं।
Bilkul. So awareness and recognition and acknowledgement that this is a problem. And suicide is
हम्म,
probably one of your most, like, death is so irrevocable. Ek bar person dies, they're dead, right? You can't do
हम्म,
anything about it. But it is coming, people notice it, right? And
yeah,
we do know that this trend of suicide increasing, that's even present here. So when
yeah,
that happens, then people sit up and say, got to do something about it. What was underneath it and how do we approach it?
हम्म,
So first is a need, awareness, and then you begin to have a conversation.
yeah.
How do we solve this, right?
Yeah,
So,
and the
hmm.
issue of suicides is thing as something that need to be tackled urgently, क्योंकि
Mhm.
इतने ज्यादा इंसिडेंट्स हो गया है एडोलेसेंट्स में। हम देखते हैं कोटा जो कोचिंग सेंटर है,
Mhm.
अ, हर महीने एक न्यूज आती है
ये जो
आईआईटी
आईआईटी
से।
वाला है, ये आईआईटी
आई
वाला है.
जी हाँ, आईआईटी और मेडिकल एंट्रेंस दोनों का इंडिया का बिगेस्ट कोचिंग सेंटर है, जहाँ
Mhm.
बच्चे घर से अकेले रहते हैं इतने स्ट्रेस में। और वो वही स्ट्रेस ही एक रीज़न है जिसके कारण सुसाइड करते हैं। ऐसे ही आईआईटीज में सुसाइड
Mhm.
रेट बढ़ गया है। देश के
Mhm.
इतने टैलेंटेड बच्चे,
Mhm.
और जबकि
Mhm.
घर में एक बच्चा दो बच्चे हैं, किसी का बच्चा सुसाइड कर लेता है, उसकी तो फैमिली खत्म हो जाती है।
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल.
कितना बड़ा इशू है, इसको टैकल करना बहुत अर्जेंटली ज़रूरत है।
Absolutely. So you're bringing up something which is very relevant to India, which we, in some ways, it has found feet because ye jo bachche who are committing suicide, they're clearly very talented, right? They're very smart. They're not like either downtrodden, whatever, who could
हम्म,
not achieve much, so they committed suicide. So
हम्म,
this has
हम्म,
feet because people recognize it. So
हम्म,
bullying, cyberbullying, pressure of getting into a good school. वो तो मैंने जब मैं इंडिया जाती हूँ, I'm absolutely struck by the fact that how education has moved from school-based learning to now tutoring, which is really very, very important. So you can feel actually the tension that exists for kids. Like, I have to succeed. And I really think the answer for India has to be, because this is like a प्रेशर कुकर इन माई माइंड, लाइक इट्स अ प्रेशर कुकर. अगर आपको नहीं मिला, मैं तो अपनी नीसेस एंड नेफ्यूज को देखती थी कि 98% उनको मिलना चाहिए इन ऑर्डर टू, एंड आई शुड बी शॉक बिकॉज हमारे टाइम पे तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं था ये. Right, you got a
हम्म,
first division or whatever, and still PMT was very competitive, but it wasn't this
yeah,
pressure cooker type of feel कि अब
yeah,
ये safety
mm,
valve फटने वाला है, ये कुछ होने वाला है यहाँ पे. मेरे को डर लगता है देख देख के. So we have to look at vocational training, things which really can produce a good and respectable living. We have to create those jobs so that people don't feel that medicine and this IIT business is the only thing. I'm surprised to see how many IIT graduates are doing other things in engineering. Well, I was listening to this
mm,
yoga instructor, जिसको मैं हर रोज follow करती हूँ, बोथरा, Saurabh Bothra, and then I was listening to the comedian Varun Grover. They're all IIT graduates. I said, तुमने वहां पे गए और फिर उसके बाद you began. So there's a lot to be done in life, and somehow
mm,
that thing has to change. That you can make a decent
mm,
living by getting into vocational things. And really, I think the
mm,
solution has to be that, because everyone
mm,
wants to fit in. And we
mm,
have created a pressure cooker situation from that. But then there is a genetic predilection for depression, which is just there. You have depression that needs to be treated. If you have
mm,
substance abuse, that needs to be treated. If there
mm,
is climate problems in schools where people feel really pressured and bullied, that needs to be addressed. So those are all causes for suicide, not just like you are in a high thing where you have not achieved anything, then you're going to kill yourself. नहीं,
yes,
suicide के बहुत बहुत और different reasons होते हैं जो कि have to
हाँ,
be tackled and understood.
हाँ, हाँ। और वो
Yeah.
प्रेशर कुकर सिर्फ सिर्फ बच्चे के माइंड में नहीं है, वो पेरेंट्स को भी है। वो
हाँ
पूरी
कि क्या
फैमिली में,
बनेगा ये?
एक घर में 3 प्रेशर कुकर्स हैं, 4, जो
हाँ
सब अपनी सिचुएशन में बहुत बहुत टेंस है।
हाँ।
आ, सबके लिए सॉल्यूशन ढूंढना होगा।
तो familial
और
familial ये जो प्रेशर होता है उसमें भी education of parents,
या
how to keep your family well, all of those things we don't. हमारा बस एक एक लक्ष्य होता है कि वो बच्चा जाके some good job and preferably जो भी इंडिया में आजकल है कि इसमें जाना है, वो हो जाता है।
सुसाइड्स की बात पे आके बात आती है डिप्रेशन पे।
हम्म
डिप्रेशन वर्ड हम एडल्ट्स के लिए तो बहुत सुनते हैं और उसकी बहुत बात होती है, लेकिन
हम्म।
डू यू थिंक दीज डेज यू फाइंड डिप्रेशन अमंग young children, very young children? And if it is there, then how should we diagnose it in the right time?
Yeah, so I think that generally, when people are depressed, they will say, I'm sad or I'm irritable. Oftentimes, young children, छोटे होते हैं, उनके पास language नहीं होती बोलने की क्या है. India में particularly, I think, whatever I've read and I've done some of that, is that a lot of the presentation of depression comes out as somatic problems. So like headaches है, constant
Hmm.
stomach aches हैं, or body aches हैं, pain है. So that
Yeah.
somatization of the depression is very common. In
Hmm.
boys, particularly, you might see irritability and defiance. Like, ये बच्चा बस बुरा है, ये इसको देखो, he just on the drop of a hat gets very angry, defiance उस तरीके से. बच्चियां जो होती हैं उनका general, because of the gender role, there is more tearfulness, more withdrawn behavior, more isolation. So you have to be very aware कि it's a change from baseline. Like there's some kids who are just introverts, that's different. But
Yeah.
when you see a change from baseline, your antennas should go up. Like कि क्या हो रहा है? ये क्यों अपने रूम के अंदर घुसा हुआ है? And आता ही नहीं है बाहर, no matter what. And this is a change from before. Then you need to sit up and pay attention. And उसके साथ there may be what we call that the depression has taken root, meaning that now you're getting the problems which engage appetite. Either they're eating too much because they're comforting themselves and getting fat, or they're not eating at all. Sleep,
Hmm.
either they're sleeping too much कि स्कूल से आए और बस बिस्तर में
Yes.
घुस गए फिर निकलना ही नहीं है. And so those signs, if they are different from before, unless there's a reason कि they've been playing sports and थक जाते हैं तो सो गए, you have to be careful in not thinking too much of that. Lack of energy, a lack of interest in things that you were interested in before. So these are all things that you want to look for. A kid may not necessarily say कि मुझे I'm sad, but irritability is usually the thing, and change from baseline in behavior, withdrawal, isolation, making statements which is अरे अब तो कुछ होएगा ही नहीं, मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकता हूँ. Pessimistic statements can sometimes be.
Hmm.
It's very important that खैर आप लोग के तो the screeners are not there, but generally if you put, because depression and suicide are national public health problems, right? ये बहुत ज्यादा होने लगा है. So you have to adopt a scale, like for example the PSC 17, which gets scored very quickly by someone, and it pops up as all the symptoms which align with depression are coming up red here. So I need to ask follow-up questions. जिसके अंदर the most important one is when you get down like that, because I'm gathering that you feel down like that. This is how I go about it. That sometimes people feel like life isn't worth living. Have you ever had thoughts like that? So it gives the child the platform कि मैं इसके बारे में बोल सकता हूँ. Again, I feel one of your problems is कि अगर बच्चा different person को देख रहा है बार बार, how do you form that relationship which will allow trust, where they feel safe कि मैं बताऊंगा तो ये कहीं जाएगी नहीं बात, or this person knows what to do about it, right? Because once you identify that the kid is suicidal, you need to know what the next steps are. कि क्या क्या कर सकते हो. There needs to be support. There needs to be firming up of the diagnosis. There needs to be medication intervention. There needs to be counseling. So the problem is identification, but then uske baad aap kya karoge? I would recommend for people who are interested in this work is to almost form like apna circle of, जैसे आप experts के साथ करते हैं ना, कि now I have noticed that this kid has, I think, some genetic abnormality. I will send them to a geneticist to get the chromosomal analysis done so that I can figure out कि क्या हो रहा है. So you have that connection. आप phone pick up करते हो और उसको phone करते हो, right? So I would say that because आपका system नहीं है, you should form a satellite of people who you can refer to. So make an effort to find a psychologist or a counselor who you can work. You're not doing the work, but you're saying, I've identified this problem. Now I want you to please take this kid, because I'm going to send them to you so that they get the treatment. So we are a step ahead, meaning we identify it, but we also give pediatricians the tools to actually work with the family till they can get to see a professional.
Yeah. Dr. Bela, you have explained everything in a very interesting way. And we would have continued if there was no time limitation. As such, the mental health disorders are a big spectrum. We just touched upon the depression and suicides and this thing only. And if time means, if there is opportunity, we'd like to have another podcast on different issues of mental health problems. Now, do you think that first thing we need to do is raising public awareness that will help in a significant way? In that case, should we have more such podcasts for the public, more publications, more information, and more people like you?
Well, it's like you're asking me a question which is very obviously very close to my heart, and it's obvious that I would say that yes, first public awareness, because if the public is informed about it, they're going to push for change and reform. Then there has to be a body of people within the area of medicine which recognizes this as a national issue, a public health issue, and to develop models. Because I don't think, of course, one pediatrician is one change, and that is good. But we really, in my mind, I always think systems. What can we create as far as a system so that it becomes easier for people? So public awareness as well as people in medicine to recognize it and say, and there may be a slew of pediatricians, who knows, who might listen to this and say, I really like this, because I know pediatricians here who will say, I'm not going to do this at all. My partner needs to do it in my practice. I don't like this. Then there's an increasing number of pediatricians who say, I really like this. I just wish I had more time. So then they create more time. They have special clinics where they do it. So usko dheere dheere incrementally aapko approach karna hai, or it can just kind of go nowhere. But I think suicide is, to me, the most attention getter of all of this. क्योंकि आपको और मुझे मालूम है, जब हम स्कूल में पढ़ते थे, तो there used to be this class of kids who were called the backbenchers, and they were all these troublemakers. And I think back and I feel like no one recognized there could have been a learning disability there. There could be ADHD, where the kid was flitting around and was just considered a bad kid. और उसको वो बिल्कुल वो 3-4 years उसको लगते थे in order to pass the thing. These are kids who need to be recognized, because you can do something to make them successful. So autism is another one. So there are tons of things which children labor under, and we know it's a universal phenomenon because there have been a lot of epidemiological studies done around the world, because some people would say in England that this is a USA problem, this ADHD. So they studied it and they found that there's an equal frequency of it there and in Far East and so on and so forth. So we know that these are universal problems, not just what we have come up with.
The only thing is that some places it is diagnosed less often. It's not
Huh?
being diagnosed. That is the real issue. It
Yes,
exists
yes.
everywhere.
So,
Yes, yes,
mhm, yeah. So
yes,
problem ये
yes.
होती है कि if you don't identify it, that individual child's life is kind of
Hmm.
less than what it could be and sometimes lost completely. And I don't
Yes,
think our
yes.
kids deserve that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So finally, what message would you like to give to your younger colleagues, the pediatrician and psychiatrist, both in India?
Well, the thing is that if this was like a zebra, where, oh, you never saw it, or like you never saw a tarantula in your life, it doesn't matter what the tarantula does. But I think because it's so common, I think we owe it to the children and families who we work with that we're able to identify this and we have solutions to it. So, for people that are interested in it, go for it because this could be a very good career for you. Because आपके अगर आप अपने आप को टूल करोगे and you will become good at doing this stuff, you might make a real mark in the field and in the nation in moving in this direction. Because NIMHANS, PGI, AIMS, these are your sort of major places, but are they able to amplify it? And can you do it individually in your own arena to make change
Yeah.
so that those circles become confluent and become a much larger thing? So for young people, this would be a brilliant area to kind of intervene because you would be as rare as hen's teeth, and you would make a real good name for yourself.
So thank you.
Mhm.
It has been a very, very nice discussion with Professor Bela Sood. I think what she suggested can work in our situation also, provided we pay attention to all the details. Let the doctors be trained and sensitive to this issue. Let there be a system for referral. Let there be more counselors and more psychiatrists in our country, more of child psychiatrists.
Mhm.
Let there be greater public awareness. Let them understand that mental health is not a stigma and that they should seek help whenever needed. When demand for help increases, doctors will have to become more proficient as providers, as you said. Demand होगी तो supply होगी, supply will increase. लोगों को उस करियर में दिखेगा कुछ तो वो उसकी तरफ अट्रैक्ट होंगे, पहले तो उस तरफ जाते नहीं थे.
Mhm.
After all, the mental health of millions is not only a personal issue, it's also a national issue.
Mhm. It is.
पहले बोलते थे कि health is wealth. Now we can say that without mental health, there is no health.
No health. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that I did not touch on, which is very near and dear to my heart, is the burgeoning and increasing neuroscience, which helps you understand. And I think part of the problem is that when you feel your brain is not working, it's the seat of reason, right? And this is a huge problem because आप कोई और area of your body you can treat and get better, but you're watching it. Here, the seat of reason is kind of off, and so this creates a problem. But we have to understand that mental health and emotional problems are so strongly connected to neuropeptides and neurotransmitters, which I didn't touch on at all. But I teach people how trauma impacts the brain, how depression impacts the brain, and that, in fact, is the other way around. The neurotransmitter disturbances are what causes biological depression. And so it's just like any other medical problem like hypertension or diabetes, that this is not the person's fault. It is the biology which is driving that. We don't speak about it in those terms. And I think for the Indian subcontinent, it is I think it is something that will attract people when they see the connection of the physical element of psychiatric problems to the production of the symptoms. So there is now very good science, including brain imaging techniques, including neurotransmitter. There are no labs to still be to not reach there, but these are all mediated through our body, and so it is no different from physical health.
एक चीज और बेला जी कि फिजिकल प्रॉब्लम होती है, फिजिकल हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम तो सिर्फ उस इंसान को होती है, और मेंटल हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम होती है तो उसकी पूरी फैमिली को, उसकी सोसाइटी को, सबको अफेक्ट करती है.
बिल्कुल
एक मदर को है तो उसके फैमिली में, एक टीचर को है तो उसके पूरे क्लास ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स को अफेक्ट करती है।
बिल्कुल
तो
बिल्कुल।
इसलिए इसलिए इसको, इसके मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट्स हैं, इसके लिए इसको ध्यान देना और भी जरूरी है।
Very good point. Extremely good
Yeah,
point. And I think
yeah.
that you made a excellent. So that is why when we work with families, we begin,
Mm,
and I'm thrilled to say it because pehle nahi tha. We are
mm,
working with pregnant mothers because of the in utero problems of toxic neuropeptides crossing the fetal placental barrier, getting into the fetal brain, and the third trimester problems which arise from mothers who are depressed or mothers who are substance abusing can have such a major impact on kids who are then born and they have their own set of problems. But then by the age of 5, you begin to see the ADHD symptoms coming up. So we try to prevent that by counseling mothers not to drink. If they're depressed, getting appropriate treatment, all of those things. So we are now moving into the area of infant mental health.
तो आप एक और सुपर स्पेशलिटी क्रिएट करने वाले हैं, एंटीनेटल साइकियाट्री।
Yes, yes, yes.
So
नहीं
thank you
है,
very much.
हाँ, yes.
Yeah,
Very small number of people, but they're doing it. And I'm thrilled because
yes,
this is something I always used to think, okay, what
yes,
have we
yes,
done upstream, which we are
yeah,
missing, and so we are catching up downstream. So,
हाँ, हाँ। सो थैंक यू वेरी मच, बहुत अच्छा लगा आपसे
sure.
बात करके। और हम चाहेंगे कि हम और पॉडकास्ट इसी तरह इन्हीं
Mhm.
सब्जेक्ट्स के ऊपर आपके साथ आगे फिर करें। तो फिर
Maybe आप
मिलेंगे।
अपनी ऑडियंस से, हाँ, आप अपनी ऑडियंस से सर्वे करके पूछें कि what are they
जी,
interested in, so that it is
बिल्कुल,
relevant to what they're saying. We spoke in very
बिल्कुल,
broad terms, but they could have
बिल्कुल।
some very specific interests.
जी हाँ, जी हाँ, जी हाँ। बहुत 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 शुक्रिया आपका। एंड
Thank
बैक टू
you.
डॉक्टर
Thank you.
टुटेजा।
Thank you very much, Dr. Tuteja,
Thank
too.
you so much, Bela ji and Ashok
Mm,
ji, for the
mm,
nice discussion. And I'm sure कि uh, our viewers and pediatricians of country will be benefited by this talk, and the social awareness will increase. Definitely, impact of mental illness is far beyond the imagination, and the society in which the awareness about the severity of the disease is at the last.
mhm.
Globally, 20% of young people experience mental health disorder. In India, only 7.3% of its 365 million youth report the mental health issues. Stigma is associated, as we discussed. What we have come out in India in last 25 years, I would like to narrate it. My teacher, Dr. Swati Bhave and Dr. M.K.C. Nair, they created a chapter in Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Adolescent Health Academy, in which for 4 years I was also chair in this academy. There are 3,500 plus members in Adolescent Health Academy who are working, training pediatricians with the different modules on mental health.
Okay.
Now, now in this pedicon, we are coming up with the preteens, issues of
Mm,
preteens. And our team of Adolescent Health Academy, they are visiting schools regularly, our pediatricians, training pediatrician, training public, going to the media, going to the public about the mental health issues and the other issues of adolescent like suicide, then depression, then OCD and PTSD and substance abuse, uh, drunken driving, and roadside accident, and so many issues which are prevalent among the study skills and stress of examination, parenting issues. We are all discussing from last 25 years.
mhm,
So this is the approach by our teachers, and we are really, I give credit to them that they have created a real good awareness, and that every year we see that the members in Adolescent Health Academy are increasing, and adolescent health issue, particularly I'm talking about teenagers from 9 to 19 years, we have created a lot problem. Not, I don't talk about the child secretary up to 9 years, but definitely we have done a good work in last 25 years, and I'm sure the dedication of our IIP members and our Rural Health Academy will definitely change the scenario in the country.
Mhm.
Thank you so much being with us, and I would like and I invite you again on a case-based study on depression, how to approach and how to make the child in a previous health and which
Okay.
is useful for the society and the family. Thank you so much.
Sure. Very good work. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much being with us,
Thank you.
and we will wait for the next session with you, a case-based study. And whenever you permit us, we'll definitely invite you again. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.